The scent of star blossom tea, brewed just as I liked it, always signaled the quiet end of a day. It mingled with the faint, metallic tang of Lucien's personal lubricants from his weapons, a scent I'd come to associate with safety, with home. My fingers traced the delicate rim of the mug, the ceramic warm against my skin. 3 years. 3 years since I shed the skin of Cale Ardent, the ghost. 3 years since I found refuge in the formidable shadow of Commander Lucien Varric. You're lost in thought again. His voice, a low rumble that always vibrated through the floorboards, through my bones, pulled me back. He stood framed in the doorway of our private quarters, his uniform jacket already discarded, revealing the severe lines of his dress shirt, sleeves rolled to expose forearms corded with muscle. The silver insignia of the Varric command glinted on his collar. I met his gaze across the room, just watching the city lights blur. They're different tonight. I didn't need to explain how they were different. He always understood the nuances of my observations. His eyes, the color of storm-swept oceans, held an intensity that could dissect a battle plan or, as now, simply absorb me. He never smiled broadly, not like the men in the propaganda holos, but a subtle softening around his mouth, a fractional crinkle at the corners of his eyes, spoke volumes to me. He moved, a predator's grace, to the worn leather armchair opposite mine. The heavy silence that often stretched between us was never empty. It was a language of its own, filled with shared glances, unspoken understanding. My suppressed pheromones, a chemical mask I'd worn for half my life, usually meant I felt nothing from others, but Lucien, sometimes a faint, almost imperceptible warmth radiated from him, a grounding presence that eased the constant tension in my shoulders. Another deployment tomorrow, he stated, not a question. My grip tightened on the mug. So I heard. The military channels always hummed with whispers, even in our secluded apartment. He studied me, his gaze dissecting. You're quiet, just tired. A lie. My gut twisted with a familiar unease. Operations always made me nervous. Not for Lucien's safety, he was a force of nature, but for the delicate facade I maintained. My past was a phantom limb, an ache I carried, an ever-present threat to this fragile peace. Stay safe, Lucien, I murmured, the words feeling inadequate. He rose, crossing the small space between us. His hand, large and calloused, brushed my cheek, a feather-light touch that still made my breath catch. His thumb stroked just beneath my eye. Always. His voice was rough, a promise etched in granite. He leaned down, his lips finding mine. It wasn't a kiss of passion, not yet, but one of deep, quiet affirmation. A silent vow. His scent, clean and sharp, filled my senses, a scent I'd foolishly begun to trust. The next morning, the air crackled with the energy of a major military push. I watched from the command center's observation deck, a secure location reserved for high-level personnel and their families. Lucien, a blur of authority and precision, moved across the tactical floor below. His voice, clear and resonant, cut through the din of comms chatter, issuing orders, redirecting units. The operation, a sweep of the Outer Rim territories, was meant to flush out a notoriously elusive rebel cell. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Not fear for him, but for us. Every flash of light on the holographic battlefield, every burst of static from the comms, felt like a threat to the carefully constructed life we shared. The drugs I took to suppress my omega biology also dulled my instincts, but some part of me, deep and primal, still screamed danger. Suddenly, a red alert flashed across the main tactical screen, a breach, not from the rebels, but from within the military's own encrypted network. A data packet, a cascade of classified files, began to stream across public channels. A collective gasp rippled through the observation deck. Then, my world shattered. A face materialized on the screen, projected for all to see. My face, younger, harder, scarred by the shadows of a life I'd buried. Below it, a dossier. Cale Ardent, former Agent 734, elite Omega infiltrator, asset of the Black Hand, highly trained in espionage, combat, and psychological warfare. Known weaknesses, none. The words burned into my retinas. The room went silent, a suffocating vacuum. All eyes, I knew, were turning to me. My carefully constructed identity, the quiet, almost unremarkable spouse of Commander Varric, evaporated in an instant. The air grew thick with unspoken accusation, with dawning realization. I felt Lucien's gaze before I saw him. He was no longer focused on the battle, on the tactical display. He stood frozen, his eyes locked on the screen, then on me. His face, usually a mask of control, was a canvas of shock, then something colder, something I'd never seen directed at me. Betrayal. A voice, amplified and authoritative, boomed from the speakers. It was General Drax. Commander Varric, secure the asset. Cale Ardent is to be apprehended immediately. He has been living under false pretenses within your command. Her words were ice, designed to condemn, to isolate. My breath hitched, asset. That's all I ever was to them. And now, to Lucien. My mind reeled. He knew. He must have known. This operation, this sudden exposure. It was a trap. A meticulously planned betrayal. My sanctuary, my home, my love, all of it. A lie, a carefully orchestrated ruse to flush me out, to capture me. My body moved before my mind could process. Instinct, honed by years of survival, took over. The emergency exit. The service tunnels. I ran, a ghost once more. The whispers of a MIGA, spy, traitor chasing me down the sterile corridors. The familiar burning sensation behind my eyes threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced it back. No time for tears. No time for heartbreak. Only escape. The thud of heavy boots echoed behind me. Guards. Lucien's guards. He was coming for me. Not to protect, but to capture. The thought was a searing brand on my soul. My lungs burned. Each gasp for air a ragged sob I refused to release. I slipped through a maintenance hatch, plunging into the labyrinthine darkness of the station's underbelly. I didn't stop running until the metallic taste of blood filled my mouth and my vision swam. I found a disused cargo bay, its air thick with the dust of forgotten machinery. My leg screamed. A sharp, insistent pain where a stray energy blast had grazed me during my frantic escape. I slumped against a cold, grimy wall, my body shaking uncontrollably. It was over. Everything. The quiet life, the gentle touches, the unspoken love, all a cruel illusion. Lucien, the man I'd given my shattered trust to, had delivered the final, fatal blow. My heart, which I thought had finally found a home, lay in pieces, bleeding out in the cold, unforgiving dark. A wave of nausea washed over me, more intense than the pain in my leg. My stomach churned, a familiar sensation that had plagued me for weeks, dismissed as stress. Now, a different, terrifying thought bloomed in the wasteland of my mind. My hand instinctively went to my abdomen. The drugs, the suppressants. Had I missed a dose? Or had they simply failed? A cold dread, far deeper than any fear of capture, settled over me. No. It couldn't be. Not now. Not like this. The pain in my leg throbbed, a dull, relentless drumbeat against the frantic pulse in my temples. The cargo bay was a tomb, its stale air thick with metallic dust and the faint, acrid scent of ozone. I pressed my palm against my lower abdomen, a shiver of cold dread snaking up my spine. The nausea, the sudden aversion to the star blossom tea I once adored, the heightened sense of smell that now picked up every faint aroma from the station's ventilation system, they coalesced into a terrifying, undeniable truth. My fingers fumbled for the emergency medical kit I always carried, a relic from my spy days. I pricked my finger, a tiny bead of blood welling up, crimson against my pale skin. The diagnostic strip, a miniature marvel of biomolecular analysis, hummed to life. The results flashed, stark and unfeeling, positive. Gestational age, 6 weeks, 3 days. The world spun. 6 weeks. That meant I was pregnant before the betrayal, before the public humiliation, before Lucien had looked at me with that chilling, unfamiliar contempt. A bitter laugh escaped my lips, a hollow, broken sound in the cavernous space. He didn't just betray me, he betrayed our child. The child he didn't even know existed. My leg wound, needed attention, a deep gash from a ricocheting energy blast. I cleaned it with antiseptic wipes, the sting a welcome distraction from the emotional agony. I wrapped it tightly, the familiar routine of self-preservation kicking in. I was a ghost, a phantom, and now, a vessel. My child. Our child. The thought was a fragile, precious thing, blooming in the barren landscape of my despair. It hardened my resolve, forged a new, sharper edge to my will. I would survive. For this life growing inside me, I would claw my way through hell itself. The station was too hot, too many eyes, too many sensors. I needed to disappear, to vanish into the underbelly of the city, where the shadows were long and the official gaze rarely penetrated. My comms unit, a tiny chip embedded in my wrist, was useless. Lucien would have locked down all networks. I was truly alone. Days blurred into a haze of pain and relentless movement. I scavenged what I could from abandoned service tunnels, traded old, forgotten credits at black markets for nutrient paste and water. My omega pheromones, usually suppressed by daily medication, began to fluctuate. The drugs were running low, and without a steady supply, my body was slowly, inexorably returning to its natural state. The scent of fear, of desperation, clung to me, a beacon for anyone with a keen nose. I felt eyes on me always. Not just the official trackers, but others. Shadows that moved with a predatory grace. Rival factions. The Black Hand, my former masters, would want me back. The Alliance, Lucien's people, would want me captured or worse. I was a walking data archive, a treasure trove of secrets. And now, a fragile omega, marked by a pregnancy that sapped my strength, blurred my focus. One evening, huddled in a derelict fabrication plant, the cold gnawing at my bones, a figure emerged from the gloom. Not an assassin, not a soldier. A beta, his face lined with worry and a surprising gentleness. His medical bag, worn and scuffed, hung heavy at his side. "You're Cale Ardent, aren't you?" His voice was soft, devoid of accusation. "The former Agent 734. My muscles tensed, ready to spring, despite the exhaustion that weighed me down. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice raspy. He raised his hands, palms open. "Easy. My name is Elias. I'm a medic, not here to harm you." He gestured to the crude bandage on my leg. "That wound looks infected. And your scent. It's a mess of stress hormones and something else. Something new." I glared, suspicion a cold knot in my gut. "How do you know my name? How did you find me?" "The whispers," he said, a faint, melancholic smile touching his lips. "They say the commander's Omega vanished. They say he was a ghost, a spy. And they say his Omega scent is changing. A lot of people are looking for you, Cale. For different reasons." He paused, his gaze softening further. "I know what it's like to be hunted, to live in the shadows." Something in his eyes, a shared weariness, chipped away at my defenses. "I don't trust anyone." "You don't have to trust me," Elias replied, taking a cautious step closer. "But your leg needs tending. And you need proper nutrition. If you want to survive, and if you want it to survive, you need help." He nodded towards my abdomen. "That's what your scent is telling me, Cale. You're pregnant." The word hung in the air, a stark declaration. I flinched, my hand instinctively covering my belly. "How? How could you know?" "I told you. I'm a medic," Elias said, his voice quiet. "And an Omega scent, even suppressed, tells a story, especially when the suppression begins to fail. You're radiating the unique hormonal signature of early gestation, a strong one, at that." He knelt beside me, his movements unthreatening. "Let me help you, Cale. I can't protect you from the world, but I can keep you alive and healthy for a little while." Desperation, a cold, sharp blade, cut through my distress. My strength was failing, my body, once a finely tuned weapon, was now a fragile vessel. I nodded, a jerky motion. "Just don't ask questions." "I won't," Elias promised, already rummaging in his bag. "Just tell me where it hurts." Weeks turned into months under Elias's care. He became my anchor in a sea of paranoia and pain. He moved me from one safe house to another, always one step ahead of the relentless hunt. He cooked nutrient-rich meals, concocted herbal remedies for the morning sickness that racked my body, and spoke in soothing tones when the nightmares of Lucien's betraying gaze haunted my sleep. My body changed, swelling with the life inside. My movements grew slower, more deliberate. The once sharp edges of my agility softened, replaced by a maternal instinct that pulsed with fierce protectiveness. The drugs had long since run out, and my Omega pheromones now bloomed freely, a sweet, earthy scent that Elias, a beta, found calming, but which I knew was a dangerous beacon in a world full of alphas. "You know, Cale," Elias said one afternoon, meticulously cleaning my latest safe house, a forgotten sub-level apartment beneath a bustling marketplace. "The commander isn't giving up. His forces are everywhere. Not just Alliance patrols, but private contractors. He's tearing the city apart looking for you." I scoffed, stirring a bland bowl of broth. "To drag me back to Drax, I'm sure. To dissect me for my secrets." "I don't think so," Elias mused, his brow furrowed. "The talk on the streets, the chatter among the low-level operatives, it's different. They say he's furious, not at you, but at Drax. They say he's looking for her head." My spoon clattered against the ceramic. "What are you talking about?" "The official story is that you were a deep-cover agent, a traitor, exposed by a brilliant counterintelligence operation," Elias explained, wiping down a dusty shelf. "But the whispers tell another tale. They say the data dump, the one that exposed you, it wasn't from the rebels. It was an internal leak, orchestrated." A cold chill snaked down my spine, despite the oppressive heat of the room. "Orchestrated by whom?" "General Drax," Elias confirmed, his voice low. "She wanted you, Cale. Not just your intelligence, but your unique Omega biology. They say she's been running experiments on suppressed Omegas for years, trying to weaponize their instincts, their pheromones." He turned, his gaze meeting mine, filled with a profound sadness. "They say she used Lucien to flush you out, fed him misinformation, made him believe you were a genuine threat, a plant." The broth turned to ash in my mouth. My mind reeled, replaying Lucien's face in the command center. The shock, yes, but then the cold, hard accusation. Was it not directed at me, but at the deception? Had he believed Drax's lies? The possibility, a fragile flicker of hope, warred with the deep-seated pain of betrayal. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, he knew. He looked at me. He knew exactly what he was doing." Did he, Elias challenged gently? Or did he look at the agent Drax made him believe you were? The ruthless spy who had infiltrated his life, his command. He's an alpha, Kale. A very powerful one. Betrayal from an Omega, especially one he'd bond with, that would hit him hard. Hard enough to make him react without thinking clearly. I pushed the broth away, my appetite gone. It doesn't matter. He still let it happen. He still chose his duty, his command over me. Over us. The words tasted like bile. He made me a target. He made our child a target. He's looking for you, Kale, Elias insisted, his voice firm. Not to capture you. Not for Drax. To protect you. To make amends. Amends. I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. There are no amends for this, Elias. He broke me. He shattered everything I built. He doesn't deserve forgiveness. He doesn't deserve to know about this baby. My hand instinctively went to my swollen belly, a protective gesture. This child is mine, and I will protect it from him. From Drax, from everyone. Elias sighed, a heavy sound. Your instincts are strong, Kale. I understand. But the world is a dangerous place for a lone Omega, especially one carrying a commander's child. You can't hide forever. He was right. I knew it. The hunters grew bolder, their presence more frequent. My scent, now fully unbound, was a siren song drawing them in. I was weak, slow, and my body was preparing for birth. I was running out of time. Meanwhile, in the sterile, high-tech confines of the Alliance Command Center, Lucian Varric moved like a storm front, a living embodiment of controlled fury. The initial shock of Kel's exposure had morphed into a cold, burning rage. He had believed the intelligence Drax provided, believed Kale was a deep-cover agent, a threat to national security. He had ordered his capture, believing he was doing his duty, protecting his people. But Kel's escape, the way he had vanished, the sheer audacity of it, had sown the first seeds of doubt. Kale was good, yes, but a wounded Omega, even one as skilled as Agent 734, shouldn't have disappeared so completely from a lockdown facility. Report. Lucian's voice cut through the comms room, sharp as a laser. His alpha pheromones, usually tightly reined, now pulsed with a dangerous intensity, making the betas and omegas in the room instinctively lower their heads. A nervous beta officer stepped forward. Commander, we've tracked several black hand cells attempting to infiltrate sectors where Arden's last known movements were detected. Also, a shadow organization, the Crimson Veil, known for their Omega trafficking operations, has shown unusual activity. Lucian slammed his fist onto the tactical display, the holographic map rippling. They're not looking for a data chip, are they? They're looking for him. His chief intelligence officer, a grizzled alpha named Rorik, cleared his throat. Commander, we've also cross-referenced the data stream that exposed Arden. The encryption keys, they matched General Drax's private network. Lucian's eyes narrowed, a glacial fury building. Explain. It appears the data was not leaked by Agent Arden. Commander, Rorik continued, his voice carefully neutral. It was uploaded to a public broadcast channel from Drax's secure server. A targeted, deliberate exposure. Lucian stared at the screen, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. Drax. The sudden, convenient intelligence on Arden. Her insistence on immediate capture. Her almost gleeful pronouncements during the broadcast. She hadn't wanted Kale captured for his crimes, she wanted him exposed. Exposed, vulnerable, and then collected. For her experiments. For her twisted agenda. The betrayal, the true betrayal, wasn't Kel's. It was Drax's. She had used him. She had used Lucian. Used his trust, his duty, to hunt down the man he loved. The man he had sworn to protect. A guttural growl ripped from Lucian's throat. An animalistic sound that sent shivers down the spines of his subordinates. His pheromones flared, a choking wave of pure, unadulterated rage. Drax, he snarled, the name a curse. She played me for a fool. He closed his eyes. A phantom image of Kel's face flashing before him, the initial shock, the dawning horror, and then the utter, devastating look of betrayal. He had seen it, dismissed it as a spy's feigned emotion. But it was real. Kale had believed he was the traitor. Guilt, sharp and agonizing, tore through him. He had broken Kale. He had hunted Kale. He had let his Omega believe he was a pawn in some grand, cruel game. And now, Kale was out there, alone, wounded, hunted by every predator in the galaxy, his scent a beacon for danger. Commander, Rorik asked hesitantly, sensing the shift in his alpha's demeanor. Lucian opened his eyes, his gaze now cold, hard, and utterly focused. General Drax, I want every shred of information on her. Her movements, her associates, her personal projects. I want her entire network dissected, piece by piece. Sir, she's a high-ranking official. Rorik began, a note of caution in his voice. I don't care if she's the Empress herself. Lucian interrupted, his voice laced with venom. She will pay for this. And Kale, his voice softened, a raw edge of desperation creeping in. Find him. Mobilize every available resource. Every scout, every drone, every informant. I want daily reports, hourly if necessary. Filter out the noise. Focus on Omega-specific tracking. He's out there, and he's vulnerable. Rorik hesitated. Sir, the official order is to apprehend Agent Arden as a fugitive. Lucien turned, his eyes blazing. Then consider this my new order. We are not apprehending him. We are protecting him. From Drax, from the Black Hand, from anyone who dares lay a hand on him. He is my Omega, and I will bring him home. His voice was a low, dangerous growl, filled with the possessiveness that permeated the air. And when I find him, I will make him understand. I will make him forgive me. The hunt intensified, but the nature of it had fundamentally changed. Lucien was no longer a hunter. He was a protector, a desperate alpha driven by guilt and a profound, aching love. He slept little, ate less, his every waking moment consumed by the relentless pursuit. He knew Kale was out there, injured, alone, and undoubtedly terrified. The thought gnawed at him, a constant, unbearable torment. He had to find him, before it was too late, before Drax, or any other predator, got their claws into his Omega. My contractions started subtly, a tightening in my lower back, a dull ache that I initially dismissed as exhaustion. But they grew, steadily, relentlessly, until they became undeniable. I was in a derelict hab unit on the outskirts of the city, one Elias had secured for me, its ferrocrete walls scarred by ancient energy blast, its air thick with the smell of damp and decay. My due date was weeks away, but the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Elias, I gasped, clutching my swollen belly, a sharp wave of pain washing over me. He was beside me in an instant, his face pale with worry. He had seen this before, delivered countless children in far worse conditions, but his concern for me was palpable. Kale, breathe. Deep breaths. He pressed a cool cloth to my forehead. It's too early. We need to slow this down. But the contractions refused to slow. My body, a force of nature beyond my control, pushed forward. My Omega pheromones, now flowing freely, filled the small room, a potent mix of pain, fear, and primal instinct. It was a dangerous scent, one that would attract alphas like moths to a flame. They're coming, I whispered, not just referring to the contractions. My enhanced hearing picked up the faint, distant thrum of repulsor list, the muffled chatter of comms. They found us. Elias cursed under his breath. He had set up a perimeter of makeshift sensors, but they were crude, easily bypassed by skilled hunters. Stay here. I'll try to buy you some time. He grabbed a scavenged energy rifle, his beta frame looking small and vulnerable against the encroaching threat. No, I cried, grabbing his arm. It's too dangerous. You have to go. Save yourself. I'm not leaving you, Kale, he said, his voice firm, his loyalty unwavering. Not now. Not with the baby coming. A loud bang echoed from the street below, followed by the splintering of wood. They were here. Assassins. From the Black Hand, no doubt, or the Crimson Veil. They moved with a chilling efficiency, their footsteps deliberate, closing in. Another contraction seized me, a blinding wave of agony. I cried out, my body arching. My mind screamed for Lucien, for his strength, his protection. But the thought was quickly replaced by a fresh wave of bitterness. He was the reason I was here, hunted, alone, about to give birth in a crumbling ruin. The door to the hab unit burst open, ripped from its hinges with a sickening screech of metal. 3 figures, clad in dark, form-fitting armor, stood silhouetted against the dim light of the corridor. Their weapons were raised, aimed directly at me. Agent Arden, one of them rasped, his voice distorted by a vocator. You've caused us a great deal of trouble. Time to come home. Elias fired a desperate, warning shot. That ricocheted off the wall. The assassins barely flinched. One of them returned fire. A precise shot that grazed Elias's arm, sending him sprawling. Elias, I screamed, a raw, primal sound. The lead assassin stepped forward, his gaze raking over my heavily pregnant form. A cruel smile spread across his face, visible even through the visor. An Omega, in this condition. What a surprise. The commander really picked a gem. He raised his weapon, a stunner, its muzzle glowing with a sickly blue light. No need to be rough. We'll just sedate her and take her in. The general will be very pleased. The general.drax. They weren't here for my secrets. They were here for me. For my body. For my child. A cold terror gripped me, colder than any fear of death. They would take my baby. They would experiment on it. No, I roared, a strength born of pure, desperate maternal fury coursing through me. I lunged, a foolish, desperate act, my body screaming in protest. Just as the stunner fired, a blinding flash erupted from the doorway. An explosion ripped through the corridor, sending debris flying, deafening me. The hab unit shook violently, dust and plaster raining down. Through the settling dust, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered. radiating an alpha presence so overwhelming it made my teeth ache. His uniform was Alliance standard, but his eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a desperate, raw intensity I recognized instantly. Lucien. He was here. The acrid scent of burnt ozone filled my nostrils, mingling with the sharp, metallic tang of fear and the burgeoning sweetness of my own omega pheromones. Now a desperate cry for protection. Through the settling dust, a figure emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, radiating an alpha presence so overwhelming it made my teeth ache. His uniform was Alliance standard, but his eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a desperate, raw intensity I recognized instantly. Lucien. He was here. My mind wrestled with the impossible. The man who had betrayed me, the man who had set the dogs on my trail, now stood before me, a sentinel of fury. His presence, an almost physical force, slammed into the remaining assassins. The air crackled with a sudden, violent tension, the very molecules vibrating with his unleashed alpha rage. Get away from my omega. Lucien's voice ripped through the shattered hab unit, a low, guttural growl that resonated deep in my chest. It wasn't a command. It was a primal declaration, a sound of absolute possession and lethal intent. The assassins, initially startled, recovered quickly. They were professionals, their movements fluid even as they registered the sheer power emanating from Lucien. Commander Varek. The lead assassin sneered, his vocator distorting the words into something metallic and mocking. A little late to the party, aren't we? General Drax will be most displeased. Lucien didn't respond with words. He moved. A blur of motion, a controlled explosion of power. His fist, encased in a reinforced gauntlet, connected with the first assassin's temple with a sickening crunch. The man crumpled, his weapon clattering to the floor. The remaining two assassins opened fire, their energy weapons spitting streaks of crimson light. Lucien's training, his absolute mastery of combat, was terrifying to behold. He dodged, weaved, and parried, a dance of death. He wasn't just fighting, he was unleashing years of suppressed fury, every strike imbued with a desperate, protective ferocity. He moved between me and the incoming fire, his body a living shield. Each deflection, each block, sent shivers through me. He was risking his life, not just for me, but for the precious, fragile life within me. Another contraction seized me, sharper, more insistent than the last. I cried out, doubling over, my hands instinctively clutching my distended belly. The pain, a white-hot wave, threatened to consume me. Kale, Elias, groaning, pushed himself up, clutching his bleeding arm. His eyes, wide with fear, darted between the brutal fight and my collapsing form. Lucien, she's in labor. It's too early. Lucien's head snapped towards me, his eyes momentarily losing their battle focus. A flash of pure terror replacing the rage. The distraction was almost fatal. One of the assassins, a lean, quick figure, lunged, his vibra knife aimed at Lucien's exposed side. Lucien, behind you, I screamed, my voice raw. He twisted, a move born of instinct, deflecting the blade with his forearm. A thin line of blood welled up, crimson against his dark uniform. He didn't even flinch. With a snarl, he brought his knee up, connecting with the assassin's jaw. The man's head snapped back, and he fell unconscious. Only one remained. He was bigger, slower, but heavily armored. He raised his heavy blaster, aiming for a kill shot. Stay down, Kale, Lucien roared, his voice cracking with urgency. He lunged, tackling the last assassin, slamming him against the reinforced wall with a force that made the entire structure groan. The blaster discharged, sending a searing bolt of energy into the ceiling, showering us with sparks and debris. The fight was brutal, a flurry of fists and boots, grunts and curses. Lucien's alpha pheromones, now a suffocating cloud in the small space, were almost overwhelming. They spoke of dominance, of protection, of absolute, unwavering resolve. They were intoxicating, terrifying, and in that moment, utterly comforting. Finally, with a savage roar, Lucien delivered a final, crushing blow. The assassin slumped, lifeless, against the wall. Silence descended, broken only by my ragged breathing, Elias's whimpers, and the distant wail of emergency sirens. Lucien stood over the fallen figures, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his arm. His uniform torn, he looked like a god of war, primal and magnificent. Then, his gaze, raw and desperate, found mine. He dropped to his knees beside me, ignoring the dead assassins, ignoring his own wounds. His large hands, still trembling slightly from the adrenaline, hovered over my belly, as if afraid to touch. His eyes, those storm-swept oceans, were filled with an anguish that mirrored my own. Kale, he rasped, his voice thick with emotion. My omega, are you all right? Another contraction hit, stealing my breath. I arched my back, a guttural sound escaping my lips. No, I'm not all right, Lucien. I'm in labor, and it's too early. The words came out in gasps, laced with pain and a fresh wave of bitterness. Thanks to you. His face crumpled, a stark testament to the pain my words inflicted. Kale, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. His voice was a broken whisper. Drax, she manipulated me. She made me believe you were a threat, a deep cover agent here to sabotage us. And you believed her. I spat, the pain fueling my anger. You believed her over me. Over everything we had. She had evidence, Kale, he pleaded, his eyes wide with desperate sincerity. Forged documents, fabricated comms logs. It painted a picture so convincing. I was blind. My duty, my loyalty to the Alliance, it clouded my judgment. I saw an enemy, not my mate. He reached out, his hand finally settling on my belly, a feather-light touch that still sent a jolt through me. And this is because of me. His voice broke, filled with self-loathing. I hunted you. I put you in this position. You did, I agreed, tears stinging my eyes, not just from the contractions, but from the raw wound of his words. The truth, finally, was laid bare. Drax, not Lucien, but the pain of his initial belief, his betrayal, still festered. We need to get her to a medical facility. Lucien, Elias interjected, pushing himself closer, his own face pale. This birth is going to be difficult. She's distressed. The baby. Lucien's head snapped up, his alpha instincts kicking in. Medical facility? No, too risky. Drax's people will be monitoring all official channels. They'll be expecting us to surface there. He looked around the dilapidated hab unit, his gaze assessing. We'll use Elias's contacts. An underground clinic. Somewhere safe. He stood, his movements still graceful despite his injuries. He knelt again, pulling me gently into his arms. The sudden contact, the warmth of his strong body, was both shocking and profoundly comforting. My amiga instinct screamed for this embrace, for the protection he offered. My rational mind, however, still recoiled from the betrayal. I can walk, I insisted, trying to push away, but my body, racked with another contraction, refused to obey. My legs felt like jelly, my muscles screaming in protest. Don't be foolish, Kale, he murmured, his voice firm yet tender. He scooped me up effortlessly, cradling me against his chest. My head rested against his shoulder, his familiar scent. A mix of sharp alpha and something uniquely Lucien, filling my senses. It was the scent of home, of safety, of everything I had lost and now, impossibly, found again. Elias, lead the way, Lucien commanded, his voice now crisp and authoritative. And alert your contacts. Tell them to prepare for an urgent, high-risk delivery. I need a clean room, sterile equipment, and a skilled obstetrician. Everything. Now, Elias, despite his injury, nodded, already scrambling to his feet. Right? I know a place. But it's a long way on foot, and the streets are crawling with Drax's patrols. Then we go off-grid, Lucien stated, his jaw set. We use the old service tunnels, the ones only a ghost would know. His eyes met mine, a silent plea for understanding, for forgiveness. The journey was a blur of pain and adrenaline. Lucien carried me through a maze of dark, echoing tunnels, his movements swift and sure. He moved with a quiet urgency, his alpha senses constantly scanning for threats. He shielded me from bumps, from the cold, from the rough edges of the decaying infrastructure. His warmth, his strength, became my anchor. Between contractions, I found myself studying his face, the lines of exhaustion, the fresh cut on his arm, the grim determination in his eyes. He wasn't the cold, unfeeling commander I had accused him of being. He was a man consumed by guilt, by a desperate need to atone. You truly didn't know, I whispered, my voice hoarse. He glanced down at me, his gaze softening. Kale, I swear on my life, I had no idea you were pregnant. And about Drax, I was a fool. A blind, arrogant fool. I let my guard down where it mattered most. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. I should have trusted you. I should have seen through her lies. My only excuse is that I was trying to protect you in my own misguided way. I thought I was saving you from your past, not delivering you back into its clutches, but you believed I was a traitor. I pressed, needing to hear it, needing to understand the depth of his misjudgment. His jaw tightened. I believed the evidence presented to me by a trusted superior. Evidence that, as it turns out, was meticulously fabricated. I saw the data, the comms logs, the financial transfers. It all pointed to you being a deep cover agent, a mole. My duty demanded I act. But my heart was tearing itself apart. He paused, his breath hitching. I saw your face, Kale, in the command center. That look of betrayal. I dismissed it as a spy's trick. But it haunted me. It was the first crack in the facade. And when Rorik showed me the true source of the leak, Drax's network, I knew I had made a terrible mistake. He shifted me slightly, adjusting his grip. I've been tearing the city apart for months, Kale. Not to capture you, to find you, to protect you, to tell you, how sorry I am. His voice was raw, etched with a pain as deep as my own. I love you, Kale. I always have, and I will spend the rest of my life making this right. The words, simple yet profound, hung in the stale air of the tunnel. I love you. He'd never said them before, not explicitly. Our love had been a quiet thing, built on unspoken gestures, on shared silences, on the profound comfort of his presence. To hear them now, amidst the chaos and pain, was a shock. A different kind of pain, a dull ache, began in my lower back, radiating around to my front. The contractions were getting closer, stronger. My body was pushing, relentlessly. Lucien, I gasped, clutching his uniform. It's happening, now. He quickened his pace, his face a mask of grim determination. Hold on, Kale. Just a little further. Elias, how much longer? Almost there. Elias called back, his voice strained. Through this next grate, then down the old metro line. The clinic is in a disused station. The world narrowed to the rhythm of my contractions, the jostling of Lucien's stride, and the desperate hope that flickered within me. He had come. He had fought for me. He believed me. The fragile seed of forgiveness began to sprout, tentative and tender, in the ravaged landscape of my heart. We emerged into a dimly lit, vast space, the abandoned metro station. The air here was cleaner, though still carrying the metallic tang of old rails. Elias was already at a reinforced door, punching in a code. It hissed open, revealing a surprisingly clean, well-lit corridor. The scent of antiseptic, of sterile gauze, filled the air. He's here, Elias shouted, pushing the door wider. Prepare the delivery room. She's fully dilated. A team of betas, clad in surgical scrubs, rushed forward. Their faces a mixture of professionalism and urgency. They took me from Lucien's arms, their touch gentle, but the separation felt like a wrench. Lucien, I whispered, reaching out for him. He gripped my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. His eyes, though filled with worry, held a fierce promise. I'm here, Kale. I'm not leaving you. Not again. They wheeled me into a small, sterile room. The lights were bright, almost blinding. A kind-faced beta obstetrician, her hair pulled back tightly, smiled reassuringly. All right, Kale. You're safe now. We're going to get this baby out. But my mind was still on Lucien. He stood just outside the room, his face pressed against the transparent partition, his gaze locked on mine. He was still bleeding, still bruised, but his eyes never left me. He was there. He was truly here. The contractions became a relentless storm, a primal force that consumed my entire being. I pushed. I screamed, I fought. Elias, despite his injured arm, remained by my side, offering words of encouragement, wiping sweat from my brow. You're doing great. Kale, he murmured, just a little more. You're so strong. Through the haze of pain, I saw Lucien. His face was a mask of agony, mirroring every one of my contractions. He clenched his fist, his body tensed, as if he could somehow share my burden, shoulder my pain. His alpha pheromones, though slightly muffled by the partition, still reached me. A calming, grounding presence amidst the chaos. Push, Kale. Just one more big push, the obstetrician urged, her voice firm. I screamed, a guttural sound torn from the deepest part of my being, and bore down with every ounce of strength I possessed. A sudden, searing pain, then a rush of warmth, a profound release. And then, a cry. A tiny, fragile sound that cut through the exhaustion, through the pain, through everything. A new life. It's a boy, Kale, the obstetrician announced, her voice filled with joy. She held up a tiny, squirming bundle, covered in a thin layer of vernix. Tears, hot and fast, streamed down my face. My son. Our son. He was so small, so perfect. Lucien's face, on the other side of the partition, was transformed. The grim commander, the battle-hardened alpha, was gone. In his place was a man utterly undone, tears streaming freely down his own face, a look of profound awe, and overwhelming love etched into every feature. They brought my son to me, placing him gently on my chest. His skin was soft, his tiny fingers curled around mine. He smelled of newness, of innocence, of everything pure and good in a world of shadows and war. He opened his eyes. They were the color of storm-swept oceans, just like Lucien's. Lucien entered the room then, his steps hesitant, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace. He knelt beside the bed, his gaze fixed on our son, then on me. His hand, still stained with blood, reached out, trembling, and traced the soft curve of our baby's cheek. He's perfect, Kale, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, raw with a vulnerability I had never witnessed. Our son. I looked at him, truly looked at him, without the filter of betrayal, without the shroud of suspicion. I saw the guilt, the remorse, the profound love that radiated from him. He had made a mistake, a terrible, heartbreaking mistake. But he had come back. He had fought for me. He had risked everything. And now, here, in this moment, holding our child, the truth was undeniable. He never meant to betray me. He was manipulated. And he loved me. He loved us. The fragile seed of forgiveness bloomed, pushing through the hard earth of my pain, unfurling its petals in the warmth of his gaze. It wouldn't be easy. The scars would remain. But looking at our son, at Lucien's tear-streaked face, I knew. We had a chance. A new beginning. A family forged in the fires of war and misunderstanding, but bound by a love that had, against all odds, endured. The tiny hand, no bigger than my thumb, clamped around my index finger with surprising strength. My son, our son, lay nestled against my chest, his eyelids fluttering in a newborn sleep. His soft cries, a sound I already knew I would die to protect, had just faded into gentle snores. The scent of him, milky and sweet, was a balm to my raw nerves, a grounding force in the chaotic aftermath. Lucien knelt beside the cot, his gaze fixed on the baby, a reverence in his eyes I'd never witnessed. The harsh lines of his face had softened, replaced by an expression of profound wonder. He still bore the grime of the tunnels, the blood stain on his uniform a stark reminder of the battle he'd fought to reach me. He's perfect, Lucien whispered, his voice hoarse, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile peace. He reached out, his callous finger tracing the delicate curve of our son's cheek. He has your nose, Kale. I watched him, my heart a tangled knot of conflicting emotions. Relief, gratitude, a nascent hope, and the lingering ache of betrayal. The forgiveness was fragile, a seedling in scorched earth. It would need careful tending. And your eyes, I replied, my voice a little stronger than I expected. Storm-swept oceans, just like yours. Elias, surprisingly spry despite his bandaged arm, bustled into the room, carrying a tray with steaming mugs. All right, you two. Less gazing, more sustenance. Kale, you need to eat. And Lucien, you need to get that arm properly looked at. Lucien finally tore his gaze from our son, a faint flush coloring his cheeks. Thank you, Elias. He accepted the mug, the steam rising to warm his face. I owe you more than I can ever repay. Just keep them safe, Commander, Elias replied, a wry smile playing on his lips. That'll be enough payment. He looked at me, his eyes gentle. How are you feeling, Kale? Exhausted, I admitted, a yawn escaping me. But, all right, better than I have in months. The truth of that statement settled deep within me. The constant pressure, the gnawing fear, had lifted, replaced by a deep, bone-weary contentment. The obstetrician wants you to rest, Elias continued. No visitors for a few hours. Just you and the little one. Lucien, I'll take you to the infirmary. Lucien hesitated, his eyes flicking back to me, then to the baby. I want to stay. I met his gaze. You need to get patched up, Lucien. And clean up. You look like you wrestled a grim beast. A small, weak smile touched my lips. He nodded slowly, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. All right, but I'll be back the moment they're done with me. He leaned down, his lips brushing my forehead, a feather-light touch that sent a shiver through me. Rest, my Omega. Both of you. As he left with Elias, the room felt suddenly empty, yet also full. The baby stirred. A soft whimper, and I pulled him closer, his tiny mouth rooted against my chest. A primal connection that filled me with an overwhelming sense of purpose. The world outside, with its betrayals and battles, seemed distant, held at bay by the fierce, protective bubble of new motherhood. The hours that followed were a blur of feeding, dozing, and the quiet contemplation of this new, fragile life. When Lucien returned, scrubbed clean, his uniform replaced with a fresh, crisp one, his arm neatly bandaged, he looked less like a warrior and more like the man I had fallen in love with. He moved with a quiet deference, pulling up a chair beside my bed, his gaze rarely leaving our son. Have you thought of a name, he asked, his voice soft. I hadn't. My mind had been too consumed with survival. No, I haven't had a chance. He nodded, understanding. I've been thinking. My father's name was Alaric. It means ruler of all. And yours? Ardent. It means passionate. Maybe Alaric Ardent Varric. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. Alaric. It sounded strong, noble, and the combination, a blend of our histories, our families, felt right. Alaric, I repeated, testing the name. I like it. A genuine smile, one that reached his eyes, spread across his face. Alaric it is then. He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. Kale, I need you to understand. Drax. She didn't just fabricate evidence. She specifically targeted me, knowing my loyalty to the Alliance, knowing how I would react to a perceived internal threat. He squeezed my hand gently. She knew I would prioritize duty, and she used that. She used us. My gaze met his. I saw her face on the screen, Lucien. The way she announced my exposure. It was theatrical, to deliberate. Exactly, he affirmed, his eyes darkening. She wanted me to be the one to bring you in, to break you down, to make you vulnerable. She knew about your past, your training. She knew you were a ghost. She needed me to flush you out into the open. He paused, a raw edge to his voice. I was so blinded by my own arrogance, my own belief in my judgment. I couldn't see past the carefully constructed lies. And the child? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Did she know? Lucien shook his head slowly. No, I don't believe so. Her focus was on your intelligence, your unique physiological profile. She wanted to dissect your past, to exploit your biology. If she knew about the pregnancy, she would have accelerated her plans, or tried to retrieve you differently. This was about control, about power. Not just over you, but over me. Over my command, the truth, stark and painful, settled over me. It didn't erase the hurt, the fear, the weeks of desperate flight, but it reframed it. It allowed a sliver of understanding, a fragile path towards healing. What happens now? I asked, looking at our sleeping son. We can't just go back. Not with Drax still out there. Lucien's jaw tightened. No, we don't go back. We move forward. And Drax, she will be dealt with. His eyes, once again, held that familiar, dangerous glint. She underestimated me. She underestimated my love for you. Kale, that was her gravest error. The next few days were a strange blend of new parenthood and strategic planning. Elias's underground clinic, hidden deep beneath the city, became our temporary sanctuary. Alaric, tiny and perfect, occupied most of my time and thoughts. Every feed, every diaper change, every soft coo was a miracle. Lucien, meanwhile, worked relentlessly. He set up a secure comms link from the clinic, mobilizing his most trusted operatives. His chief intelligence officer, Rorik, a man whose loyalty was absolute, arrived discreetly, bringing a trove of data. General Drax has been using a network of black market brokers and rogue scientists, Rorik explained, projecting a holographic map onto the wall of our makeshift command center. She's been secretly funding research into amiga pheromone manipulation, trying to create a new generation of bioweapons. Kale, your unique profile, your suppressed pheromones, made you the perfect test subject. My stomach churned. Weaponized omegas, just like the Black Hand tried to do. Worse, Lucien interjected, his voice grim. The Black Hand sought to control omegas. Drax seeks to engineer them, to strip them of their will, to turn them into living tools. Rorik pointed to several nodes on the map. These are Drax's known research facilities, all off-world, under deep cover, heavily guarded by her private security forces, non-Alliance personnel. Her mistake, Lucien stated, his gaze hard. Using non-Alliance assets, it gives me plausible deniability. I can move against her without officially declaring war on a superior officer. And the leak that exposed me? I asked. How did she manage that without detection? She had an inside man, Rorik explained. A data architect in the Alliance's central intelligence. He had access to your old files, Kale. He uploaded them directly to a public broadcast channel, knowing it would trigger a mandatory apprehend order on your person. And then she manipulated me into leading the operation. Lucien finished, his voice laced with self-reproach. She knew I would pursue you relentlessly, believing you were a genuine threat. She wanted to corner you, to capture you, and then to disappear you into her research facilities. I shivered, imagining the fate that had awaited me. The cold, sterile labs, the experiments, the violation, and with Alaric, it would have been even worse. We need to hit her where it hurts, I said, my voice firm, a cold resolve settling over me. Her data, her research. Without that, she has nothing. Lucien looked at me, a flicker of surprise, then pride in his eyes. Exactly, but her servers are isolated, encrypted with a bespoke protocol. My tech teams are good, but breaking that kind of encryption would take weeks, maybe months. Unless you have the key, I offered. My training, it gave me access to certain backdoors, certain vulnerabilities in their systems. The Black Hand developed their own encryption, but I learned how to bypass it. Drax's protocols, they're based on similar architecture. I might be able to create a bypass. Lucien's eyes widened. You can break her encryption, not break it, I clarified. But I can build a ghost key, a one-time access point that will allow your teams to download everything before she even knows she's been compromised. Rorik whistled softly. That would be unprecedented, Kale. Highly dangerous, though. It would require you to interface directly with the terminal, potentially exposing you to her countermeasures. I've done worse, I said, a ghost of my old self returning. I'll need a secure terminal, a clean network, and about 72 hours of uninterrupted focus. I glanced at Alaric, sleeping peacefully in his cot, and someone to watch him. Lucien stepped forward, his hand resting on my shoulder. Kale, you just gave birth. You're still recovering. It's too risky. I met his gaze, my resolve unwavering. This is my fight too, Lucien. She tried to take everything from me. From us. I won't let her. Besides, I added, a hint of steel in my voice, I'm the only one who can do this. He studied me, a silent conversation passing between us. He saw the fire in my eyes, the fierce protectiveness of a mother, the honed instincts of a former spy. He saw that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my agency, about fighting for the future we were trying to build. All right, he finally conceded, his voice firm. But we do this my way, Rorik. Find us the most secure, isolated terminal in the sector. Elias, you're on Alaric duty. And Kale. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and admiration. I'll be right there with you. Every step of the way. The chosen terminal was deep within an abandoned data mine, a relic from a forgotten era of information storage. The air was cool and dry, the silence broken only by the hum of ancient servers. Lucien had personally secured the perimeter, placing his most loyal guards at every access point. Elias was in an adjacent room, Alaric nestled safely in a portable bassinet, humming a lullaby. I sat before the terminal, the glowing interface a familiar, yet daunting sight. My fingers, still trembling slightly from the exertion of childbirth, hovered over the holographic keyboard. The ghost key, a complex piece of code, a digital skeleton key that would unlock Drax's entire empire. Lucien stood behind me, his presence a solid, reassuring weight. He didn't speak, didn't offer advice. He simply was. His scent, a grounding mix of sharp alpha and something uniquely comforting, filled the small space, a silent promise of protection. I began to work. Lines of code flowed from my fingertips, a dance of logic and intuition. I delved deep into the network, navigating the labyrinthine defenses Drax had erected. It was like fighting a digital war, every firewall a barricade, every encryption layer a shield. My mind, sharp and focused, moved with a speed and precision that surprised even me. The old Kale, the ghost, was reawakening. Hours bled into one another. My eyes burned, my head throbbed. But I pushed through. I felt Lucien's hand on my shoulder, a gentle squeeze that reminded me to breathe, to keep going. He brought me nutrient paste, water, silently ensuring I stayed hydrated and fed. I finally whispered, my voice hoarse, after what felt like an eternity. A flood of data, a torrent of files, began to cascade across the screen. Drax's entire network, laid bare. Research data, financial transactions, communications logs, even personal diaries. It was all there. Download everything, Lucien commanded, his voice tight with anticipation. Every single byte. Rorik's teams are standing by. As the data streamed, I saw it. The names of the Omegas Drax had experimented on. The horrifying details of her procedures. The plans for a new generation of biosoldiers, stripped of their free will, controlled by synthetic pheromones. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about me. This was about countless others. She's even implicated several high-ranking officials. I noted, my voice grim. They've been funding her, providing her with subjects. Looking the other way, Lucien's face was a mask of grim satisfaction. Good. We'll expose every last one of them. This is bigger than just Drax. This is a systemic rot. The download completed. I disconnected, leaning back, utterly spent. The ghost key collapsed, leaving no trace, no digital footprint. Drax would never know how she was compromised. Lucien knelt beside me, his eyes filled with concern. You did it, Kale. You saved us all. He pulled me into a gentle embrace, careful of my still healing body. His warmth enveloped me, a sanctuary against the cold reality of the world. We're not safe yet, I murmured, my head resting on his shoulder. Drax will know something is wrong. She'll come for us, and the others, the ones she implicated. Let them come, Lucien growled, his alpha presence a fierce shield around me. We're ready. My forces are already moving. They're hitting her facilities simultaneously, based on the intel you just provided. Her network is collapsing as we speak. The next few weeks were a maelstrom of activity. Lucien, with the undeniable evidence provided by my ghost key, launched a full-scale, surgical strike against Drax's network. The revelations sent shockwaves through the Alliance. High-ranking officials were arrested, research facilities raided, and the Omegas held captive were freed. Drax herself, cornered and exposed, tried to flee but was apprehended by Lucien's personal guard. I watched it all from the relative safety of the underground clinic, nursing Alaric. My heart a complex mix of triumph and exhaustion. Elias remained a steadfast presence, a quiet guardian, helping me navigate the demands of new motherhood while the world outside crumbled and rebuilt itself. Lucien visited whenever he could, his face often streaked with fatigue, but his eyes always finding mine, always seeking our son. He would sit for hours just watching Alaric sleep, his large hand gently stroking the baby's head. He brought me updates, always careful to shield me from the grislier details, but keeping me informed. The Omegas, they're being rehabilitated, he told me one evening, his voice softer than usual. Elias's network has been instrumental in finding them safe havens, providing them with the care they need. And Drax? I asked, my voice flat. She's in an Alliance detention facility, he replied, his jaw tight, awaiting trial. The evidence is overwhelming. She won't see the light of day again. A wave of something akin to peace, a quiet satisfaction, washed over me. It wasn't revenge, not truly. It was justice for myself, for Alaric, for all the Omegas she had exploited. Kale, Lucian began, his voice hesitant. I know there are still scars between us. He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing the lines on my palm. I won't ask for immediate forgiveness. I want to prove it to you. Every day. That my loyalty, my love, is absolute. That I will never, ever let anything come between us again. I looked at him, truly looked at the man who had torn my world apart, and then, just as fiercely, put it back together. He hadn't just spoken words, he had acted. He had risked everything, dismantled an entire corrupt network, all to protect me, to protect our child. It's going to take time, Lucian, I admitted, my voice soft. A lot of time. But I see you. I see what you've done, and I believe you. A profound relief washed over his face, his shoulders visibly relaxing. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine. Thank you, my Omega. Thank you for giving me a chance. Alaric stirred, letting out a tiny squeak. Lucian pulled back, a soft chuckle escaping him. He scooped our son into his arms, holding him with a tenderness that belied his formidable exterior. Looks like someone wants his father, he murmured, his eyes alight with paternal love. Watching them, a warmth spread through my chest. A feeling of rightness that transcended all the pain, all the fear. We were a family. Not a perfect one. Not one without its share of trauma and scars. But a family forged in the fires of war and misunderstanding. Bound by a love that had, against all odds, endured. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Real, tangible hope. And that, I realized, was a new beginning. The morning light, filtered through the thick, reinforced windows of our new home, cast long shadows across the polished floor. It wasn't a military compound, nor a hidden safe house. It was a sprawling, yet understated, estate nestled in a verdant valley, far from the bustling, polluted megacities. Lucian had purchased it under layers of shell corporations, a truly private sanctuary. The air here smelled of pine and damp earth, a welcome change from the recycled air of the station or the stale dust of the hab units. Alaric, now 4 months old, gurgled happily in his playpen, batting at a mobile of stylized celestial bodies. His eyes, still the deep, captivating blue of Lucian's, tracked my movements as I prepared his morning formula. The rhythms of motherhood had settled into a comfortable routine, one that still amazed me with its profound simplicity and complexity. Lucian entered the kitchen, his presence a familiar warmth. He wore civilian clothes, a soft tunic and trousers, a stark contrast to the severe uniforms he once favored. The transformation was still a quiet marvel to me. Morning, Kale, he murmured, his voice a low rumble that always sent a shiver down my spine. He leaned over, pressing a soft kiss to my temple, his hand resting briefly on my lower back. How's our little stargazer? He's discovered his feet, I replied, a smile playing on my lips, and he's convinced they're the most fascinating things in the universe. Lucian chuckled, moving to the playpen. He scooped Alaric up, holding him high, eliciting a delighted squeal from our son. And rightly so. They'll carry you on many adventures, won't they, little one? His voice, when speaking to Alaric, was always filled with a tenderness that still caught me off guard. We settled into the breakfast nook, a sun-drenched alcove overlooking the sprawling gardens. Elias joined us, as he often did. He had become an indispensable part of our small, unconventional family, serving not just as Alaric's primary medic, but as a trusted friend and confidant. He had even set up a small, fully equipped clinic within the estate, continuing his work with displaced Omegas and other victims of Drax's regime. The first group of Omegas from Drax's facilities arrived yesterday, Elias reported, stirring his tea. They're still disoriented, but physically stable. The psychological trauma is severe, of course, but they're safe, and they're beginning to talk. Lucian nodded, his expression grim. Good. Every piece of testimony strengthens our case. The Alliance court-martial against Drax is proceeding. The evidence you provided, Kale, was irrefutable. And the others she implicated? I asked, spooning a dollop of pureed fruit into Alaric's eager mouth. Several high-ranking officials have been stripped of their ranks and are facing charges. Lucien confirmed. The fallout from this scandal is immense. It's forcing a complete restructuring of several key departments within the Alliance. A necessary cleansing. A cleansing you spearheaded, I pointed out. You defied direct orders, risked your career, your reputation, to expose the truth. He met my gaze across the table, his eyes earnest. It was the right thing to do, Kale. And it was for you. For Alaric. For our future. He paused, his voice softening. I destroyed your trust once. I would never do so again. Not for any command, any duty, any superior. The words, though simple, resonated deep within me. The scars of betrayal were still there, faint but present, reminder of the darkness we had navigated. But his actions, his unwavering devotion, his transparency had slowly, painstakingly, rebuilt the fragile bridge between us. The Black Hand and Crimson Veil are still out there, though, Elias reminded us. Ever the pragmatist. They haven't forgotten you, Kale, or the information they believe you still possess. Let them come, Lucien stated, his jaw firm. This estate is shielded, protected by layers of advanced security, and I have assembled a team of specialists who are fiercely loyal, vetted personally by Rorik. They know the risks. They know who we are protecting. He had indeed. The estate was a fortress, yet it felt like a home. There were no visible turrets or armed guards, but the subtle hum of energy shields, the discreetly placed sensors, and the quiet vigilance of his hand-picked security detail were always present. What about your career, Lucien? I asked, a lingering concern. You stepped down from your command. What will you do? He smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile that reached his eyes. I'm building something new. An independent security, an intelligence firm. One dedicated to protecting those who fall through the cracks, those exploited by the very systems meant to protect them. Elias's network will be our primary contact point for Omegas in need. Rorik is handling the logistics. It's different, but it's meaningful, and it keeps me close to you. To Alaric. He reached across the table, taking my hand. His touch was warm, reassuring. I spent my life chasing power, chasing duty. I nearly lost everything that truly mattered. Now, my duty is to you, to our son, to build in a world where he can grow up safe, free from the shadows that haunted us, the image of the cold, ruthless Commander Lucien Varric, the man who had terrified me, who had seemingly condemned me, blurred with the gentle, devoted father and partner sitting before me. The two were inextricably linked, forged in the crucible of misunderstanding and redemption. Life settled into a rhythm of domesticity, interspersed with the quiet, urgent work of Lucien's new venture. I found myself drawn into it, lending my expertise in secure communications and data analysis. My mind, once a weapon of infiltration, now worked to build networks of protection, to identify threats before they materialized. It was a different kind of fight, one waged with information and strategy, rather than stealth and violence. One evening, after Alaric had been put down for the night, Lucien and I sat on the veranda. The cool night air carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine. The stars, unobscured by city lights, glittered like scattered diamonds across the velvet sky. Do you ever miss it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The old life, the command, the power. He leaned back in his chair, his arm resting lightly around my shoulders. Sometimes the adrenaline, the clarity of purpose. But then I look at Alaric, or I look at you, and I realize this. This is a different kind of power, a more profound purpose. He turned his head, his gaze searching mine. Do you? I considered the question carefully. The ghost, Agent 734, had been a part of me for so long. The thrill of the mission, the satisfaction of a perfectly executed infiltration, the quiet hum of danger that was almost a companion. Sometimes the quiet, I admitted. The anonymity, the feeling of being completely unburdened by expectations. I sighed softly. But then I remember the loneliness, the constant fear, the hollow ache of never truly belonging, never truly being seen. I turned my head, resting it against his shoulder. This is better, Lucien. Even with the lingering threats, with the knowledge of what we've endured. This is real. He squeezed my shoulder gently. It is. And we'll face whatever comes, together, as a family. Our peaceful existence, however, was not without its challenges. The world was still a dangerous place, and our past were long, reaching shadows. One afternoon, a high-priority alert flashed across Lucien's comm tablet. A known Crimson Veil operative, a particularly ruthless alpha known for his expertise in tracking Omegas, had been detected in a nearby sector. He was too close for comfort. Lucien's face hardened, the commander briefly resurfacing. He's looking for you, Kale. He must have picked up on residual traces of your pheromones, or perhaps he's just following old leads. My heart hammered against my ribs. The old fear, cold and sharp, pricked at me. I looked at Alaric, sleeping soundly in his crib. We can't let him get close. No. Lucien agreed, his voice low and dangerous. We won't. My team is already moving to intercept. We'll cut him off before he even gets within 100 kilometers of the estate. He turned to me, his gaze softening. Stay inside, Kale. Stay with Alaric. I'll handle this. I'm not a helpless amiga, Lucien, I reminded him, my voice firm. My training is still there. My instincts are sharper than ever. He nodded, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. I know. But you are also a mother. And right now, your most important mission is to protect our son. Let me protect you both. He leaned in, kissing me deeply, a promise and a reassurance in the press of his lips. I'll be back. I watched him go, a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. The sounds of his security detail mobilizing, the faint hum of repulsor lifts, faded into the distance. I held Alaric closer, his tiny weight a grounding presence. The quiet life we had built was constantly threatened, constantly tested. But this time, I wasn't alone. This time, I had Lucien, and I had a reason to fight. Hours later, Lucien returned, his face grim, but his eyes held a steely satisfaction. He's been neutralized, he stated, his voice clipped. He won't be bothering anyone again. He looked at Alaric, then at me. It's a constant battle, Kale, but we're ready for it. We'll always be ready. I walked into his arms, burying my face in his shoulder, inhaling his familiar scent. I know. Months turned into a year. Alaric took his first steps, spoke his first words. He was a bright, curious child, a living testament to the love that had bloomed amidst the wreckage of our past. Our scars remained, but they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of battles fought, of lessons learned, of a love that had proven its resilience. Lucien's independent firm, Varic Solutions, thrived. It became a beacon of hope for countless Omegas and other vulnerable individuals, caught in the crosshairs of a militarized, often ruthless, society. Elias's medical network expanded, providing care and sanctuary. Rourke, a man of unwavering loyalty, managed the complex logistics, ensuring their operations ran smoothly and discreetly. The work was dangerous, demanding, and often heartbreaking, but it was also profoundly rewarding. We were building something new, something meaningful, a legacy for Alaric that was built on protection, justice, and the unwavering belief in the power of empathy. Our life together was not a fairy tale. There were still moments of tension, lingering shadows from the past. Sometimes, a quiet night would be disturbed by a coded message, a distant threat. But we faced them together, a united front. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, we sat on the veranda, Alaric asleep in his crib nearby. Lucien held my hand, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles. I was thinking, he began, his voice soft. We never had a proper wedding. Just a quiet ceremony, a formality. Before everything, my heart fluttered. Our initial marriage had been a quiet, almost clandestine affair, born more of my desperate need for anonymity and his desire for a stable, domestic life than grand romance. No, we didn't, I agreed, a wistful smile touching my lips. I want to do it properly, he said, turning to face me, his eyes full of a deep, abiding love. With vows, with family, with all the promises we've already kept, and all the ones we have yet to make. A celebration of our survival, of our love, of our new beginning. Tears welled in my eyes, warm and unexpected. Lucien, I whispered, overwhelmed. Kale Ardent, he said, his voice earnest, will you marry me again? And build a new future, free from the shadows, with me, and with our son. I looked at him, at the man who had faced his own mistakes, who had fought to redeem himself, who had shown me a love so fierce and unwavering it had brought me back from the brink. I looked at the quiet strength in his eyes, the gentle curve of his mouth, the unwavering devotion etched into every line of his face. Yes, I breathed, a profound sense of peace settling over me. Yes, Lucien, 1,000 times yes. He pulled me into his arms, kissing me deeply, a kiss that spoke of promises fulfilled, of trust rebuilt, of a love that had traversed the darkest valleys and emerged, stronger and more resilient, into the light of a new dawn. Our journey was far from over. The world was still dangerous, still unpredictable. But with Lucien, with Alaric, with the family we had forged from the ashes of betrayal and misunderstanding, I knew we could face anything. This was our new horizon, painted with the vibrant colors of hard-earned love, unbreakable bonds, and the boundless promise of a future built, brick by painstaking brick, on forgiveness and hope.